Okay, we'd like to, oh wait, I guess I can hold this. We would like to welcome you all out to the Lawn Licensing Committee meeting, starting promptly at 9:08. I won't make any comments about starting at 9:08, but I was ready to start at 9, but Laura didn't want to start at 9. Okay, should we? I just dissed you.
Oh, say it again.
I said I was ready to start at 9, but Laura didn't want to start at 9. She wanted to start at 10 after. Okay, so I think we should all introduce. Don't we usually do that? Let's introduce ourselves. Tracy, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Tracy Watson, General Counsel for the Utah Education Association.
Bonnie Henry, I'm the Eastern Utah UNICEF Director for UNICEF.
Can you say that first? Easter?
Eastern UNICEF.
Oh, Eastern. Thank you.
You're very religious as well.
I'm really religious.
I'm Diana Sudworth, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Jody Kaufman, Health and Physical Education Specialist.
Terry Eugene Shoemaker. Okay. I represent USSA and Utah School Teachers Association.
Royce Van Tassel,
Good. You want to do our officer?
Trooper.
I'm James. I represent the Highway Patrol.
Kevin John, Internal Audit for the State Board.
Lisa Netzel-Bloom, UEA.
Steve Voorhees, Assistant Superintendent.
Okay.
USBA, and they are related.
And they're related. They're mother and daughter. Okay.
You got to look through the brain, but I am the oldest.
Well, we'd like to welcome you all, and we're going to just start with, we're going to start right in. Oh, we have Brian Quisenberry here. And do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
yes.
I guess we
I'd
should.
like to introduce our
We have a
Janice,
new,
too.
Janice is our new person.
And board member Lisa Cummins is on the line. Are you there?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
So Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent of Policy, and you all know Sybil Child, who this will be her last meeting supporting us here at Law and Licensing because she's moved to a new position, is now supporting our rules and yes, so she's taken over Kathy Aiken's position, if you remember Kathy. And Janice Christensen is my new assistant. She's kind of the new Sybil, so to speak. So she will be our permanent staff moving forward. And so I wanted to introduce Janice to you all. She has a background. She worked with attorneys in her prior life before she came here. So she's used to handling difficult people, AKA attorneys, right, Janice? So we're just really happy that Janice has joined us, and she's excited to work with all of you. So,
Well, we'd like to welcome you all out here. And we're going to start promptly with 2.1. And Jody is going to walk us through. Get to the right place. Okay. This is an action item, the parent guardian consent form for sex ed instruction.
I'm Jody Kaufman. I am the Health Education Specialist here at the State Board of Education. We need to revise the parental consent form for sex education due to changes in the legislative session, specifically House Bill 286. The changes that are made, on the first page, there were 4 things that were prohibited or are not approved to be taught. The 4th one was deleted, and it's just because it was kind of a duplicate of the 3rd. So there used to be a line that said advocacy of sexual activity outside of the marriage, and that was stricken, and that's because it's covered in advocacy of premarital, extramarital sexual activity. The codes were changed for the recodification, so those have been updated. And then on the second page, the items that must be taught, refusal skills has been added.
I really like that.
Yeah. And then I've pre-checked 2 items, and that's because in 53G 10402, yes, sorry, had to cheat, 402, those items have to be taught in health education. It's in statute that they have to be taught. And since this form is for the teacher's instruction of what the teachers will teach, we can't have teachers not check those two things because in statute they have to teach them. And that's why they're pre-checked. So that's the only thing that's changed, other than I want to hand you each one of these because we had someone call last week with some kind of grammatical changes. So, oh yeah, can I hand these? Thanks. Thank you, Laura. So rather than me deciding on which grammatical changes, I would rather you decide which changes you would like to make, if any. So the things that are highlighted in yellow are additions for this phone call.
Right.
Yep, to add in. So on the first line, the pre-checked items are required for instruction in health education, and then the code. And then next to contraception, highlight include condoms. On the next line, prohibited and not authorized mean the same thing, so we don't need both. Then down in the options, scheduled activities stricken. Option 3, prior to deciding, stricken. And then scheduled activities all the way down, stricken. So if you want any of those changes, I'm happy to make them. So it's only on that second page. The very first page is just a summary of what those changes are. It doesn't change content at all. It's just their grammatical changes. So if you like those, I'm happy to change them.
So Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, not sure how to show you this change.
Jody, is it possible to add it to board docs?
Absolutely.
Do you want to send?
Okay.
Do I have it?
No, but I can send it to you today.
Okay. Well, I think she wants to access
Right
it
now.
right now.
Okay.
Do you? Oh, that's
Okay.
a good idea. Do you want me to do that?
We're going to try to
So
take a picture of it.
That's a good idea.
that would be great. So Vice Chair Warner, I have a few questions
Well,
when you're ready to take questions.
okay, why don't you start with your questions, and then we'll go to audience questions or concerns or comments, and then we'll come back.
Okay, great. So I called Jody earlier this week with some of my concerns. She had mentioned to me that under physiology, that pregnancy and childbirth and the mind, body would all be taught under that. And I'm concerned with would mental health be taught in that physiological section, and if pregnancy and childbirth are listed as separate topics as well as being in physiology that have to be taught, is that kind of counterintuitive to list them as opt-in or opt-out topics that parents can participate in? So we'll start with that one. I have a few, but if you could address that.
Lisa, are you talking about, when you talk about mental health, can you give us an example? Are you talking about like postpartum depression or something like that?
That could be one of them. Mental health, could run the gauntlet. I don't think we've really had a great discussion about what mental health looks like. I know that mental health has been talked about a lot as far as teaching students in maybe another class. But so I really want to hash that out, and what does that look like? I'm really concerned about the push for social emotional learning and what that looks like. Whose definitions are we using? So if we could just maybe dive into that a little bit.
Okay. Do you want to start?
Yep, sure. So physiology for the purpose of sex education is how something works. So it's hormones and endocrine system. That's all this means.
So in our discussion earlier this week, then you said it was mental health as well. Is that not the case then at all?
No. So the brain is part of physiology, not mental health. Mental health is a separate strand. Physiology, it's
Okay, so the mind, so when you talk about the mind, is that how hormones affect the mind? Because then you are going into mental health and contraceptives and how that affects the brain.
Well, yeah, contraception is on here.
Well, yes, and that's why I'm saying, because they're all all tied together, and parents can opt out from any one of these. I just, are parents aware that contraception, affects the brain? There's studies that have come out that have said that the birth control pill does affect depression, and does increase postpartum depression.
I think that would be something discussed. Like if somebody's on birth control, I think that's something that would be discussed between the medical provider and the youth and their parent or their parent. I'm not sure you're getting into that, are you?
That's what I'm wondering. I don't know. We don't know what the curriculum is going to look like going forward. What new curriculum is being brought in. I don't know that comprehensive sexuality will come in through the human sexuality portion of this. Because it's now separate from human reproduction. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, and so I'm trying to hash this out. So if I could get some help, that'd be great.
Would you like me to answer?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So Jody again, Lisa.
Yep.
So I was just letting you know that it was Jody again, since you're not in front of me.
Yes. No, you're great.
So with all of these subjects, as we discussed earlier, every single thing on here, curriculum is decided at the school board level. So either the district board or the charter board, they decide the curriculum. Our core standards don't go into any of the things that you are worried about or concerned about, your word. So physiology in our standard is simply how the brain and hormones work through puberty. If it's in the younger, like 5th grade, right, they talk about puberty, or as fetal development. So it's just it is simply science of it. It's just how the hormones affect human development. It is very, very scientific based in the standards.
Okay.
If a school, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So then I would suggest maybe defining these so that parents know and understand that it doesn't go into anything beyond what is listed in the standards at the state level. Instead of having them just listed, also having them defined. I don't know if we can add that. So that there's no question and that parents aren't confused and teachers aren't confused. Does that make sense?
We're going to have Angie kind of help you out a little bit here.
So this is Angie Stallings, and this is a model form. And so I don't know, it's not a rule or the standard, so that it might be helpful there's kind of a package of different resources here at the state board that we provide. So when the problem, I guess, is that the local school board would be the one to determine at the district level or the charter school governing board level what the curriculum looks like and what they actually are going to instruct on. And if we were to try and define those in here, that could get confusing or limiting what the local district or charter does. But so I guess I'm trying to understand what you're hoping to help parents understand through the form. Are you wondering, I'm wondering if maybe you're asking for a copy of the instructional materials, or if that would be something, or the standards?
I mean, if you want to pass that out to all the parents, that'd be fantastic. But I don't think that will happen. What I'm trying to prevent is comprehensive sexuality from being embedded into our education, and where we're getting more defined with our topics. I just want to make sure that we're more defined with our definitions on what those topics represent. And if we're not going to publish definitions and make it a broad decision for the LEAs to decide on their own, then yes, comprehensive sexuality education will come into the classroom.
Okay, Board Member Belknap.
Lisa, I appreciate this conversation. However, this is merely a forum for parents to say, yes, I want my student to have this opportunity, or no, I do not want my student to have this opportunity. And if a parent is worried about this, for number one, they don't have to sign this, and it's an opt-in option. It's not an opt-out. And second, if as a parent I'm worried about what they're teaching in psychology, I'm going to call the district and say, what curriculum are you using? I want to see it. And so I'm not sure that this form is the place to put all these definitions, because we also can't put what?
Option 3 is that. Yeah, that is.
Oh, option 3 is that.
Oh, yes, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it's on the,
So, Lisa, you can look at option 3 on the
No.
form.
Yes, I see option 3.
Yeah, you can have, parents can check that to discuss the planned curriculum and review the materials, and then they'd have a better understanding of what you mean, what is meant by physiology.
Or human sexuality.
Or human sexuality.
Contraception, or refusal skills, or, anyways.
All of them.
So, yeah, there's a lot of concern here. The other, if I may address another question, is there any repercussions or warning for teachers to make sure that they stick within the law of teaching?
Okay, Jody will answer that question.
Yes, every teacher takes a law and policy training course. It is required for all first-year teachers, and they have to renew every 3 years. They have to pass this quiz at the end with 100%, and it goes over the law. It goes over what they are prohibited from teaching. It goes over basically the entirety of 53G, 10402, and 403. It talks in detail about the parent consent form. It also says in detail, if they go against the law and policy, that there are repercussions for the teacher.
Such as?
There are some, this is Angie, I believe there's a UPAC violation where if you violate that standard, you can be reported to UPAC and then receive discipline on your license. Mm-hmm.
It is their license, and that is in the training that they are required to do, and it does talk about how it can affect their license.
Okay. Is there anywhere on here? I'm not seeing any that this is that this is an option and not a must-have.
Well, you've got the 4 options there. You've got the 4 options there that people can either participate in everything, or they can participate in some of the stuff. You can contact the school, or you can deny your kids even participating. So there are 4 options there for the parents to determine.
Okay, but physiology and refusal skills are not options to refuse.
Lisa, Jody can answer that again.
A parent can opt in. It's an opt-in form. The parent can opt in to whichever they are, including physiology and refusal skills. The teachers or the schools cannot decide to not teach these 2 things. Right, where a district or charter can decide not to teach any of the other items, the teacher and school must teach physiology and refusal skills because it's in statute. But a parent can still opt out of any individual, the entire thing, and really it's opting in. They're opting into what they want.
Okay. And just for the public's notification and to have this on record, the reason that pornography, harmful effects of pornography is not on this list is because that is mandated by the law to be taught above what this form talks about, correct?
Not entirely. So it was chosen, so it's in the harmful effects of pornography is in the items that must be taught as part of health and instruction, but they but it's not required for parental consent. The items on this form are the only items that require parental consent.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. So children will be taught that, and parents cannot opt out of that portion of it. Correct?
I would.
Is fair.
A
Yes.
parent can opt out of anything really if they wanted, but for the harmful effects of pornography, it doesn't require parental consent ahead of time for it to be taught.
Okay. Okay.
Did you have any other
All right.
questions, Lisa?
No, I just have lots of concerns, and I don't think they'll be addressed here in committee, especially when we have such a broad definition, and LEAs will be able to bring in comprehensive sexuality. It's a huge concern for me. So, no, I've got nothing else.
Okay, thank you. I do have one question. What is the standard on refusal skills?
So the definition in statute for refusal skills is to refuse another person's sexual advance, to recognize when someone refuses your sexual advance, how to seek counseling, and how to refuse an advance for an electronic submission and report it.
Okay, I just wanted to, that's great. Thanks. Any other questions?
Yes. May I have one more?
Uh-huh.
With this form, what ages and what groups is that being brought forward to? How young?
Middle school health class and high school health class.
Okay.
Typically 8th grade and 10th grade.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Brittany?
Yeah, I was just looking at the proposed edits from the stakeholder input, and under the contraception, she wanted to add including condoms, and I couldn't gather from this information why that was important, because she says it appears, contraceptives and condoms appear here, but not on the checklist. The
Correct.
paragraph below, so I'm just curious. That's in a page before.
On the paragraph right below, demonstrations on how to use condoms or any contraceptive methods. And then I guess the factual unbiased information about contraceptives and condoms. So if we're saying contraceptive and condoms and separating below, in parentheses next to contraception to add the including condoms is more clarifying.
Okay, yes.
Can I just ask why we pull out condoms as specific when they're part of contraception as a whole?
I don't have a fantastic answer for that.
Okay.
If you would like it to only be contraception, we can make that adjustment as well.
Sorry, I apologize. I get caught up on details.
No, please.
Too often, but
Please,
so it says information, and then in the second bullet under it, it says there will be prior parental consent before teaching any aspect of contraceptive or condoms, as if they're different things when they're
Right.
it's all part of the same thing. And then it goes on, and then we pull it out. And so I'm just curious if it would be better in the full document just to say contraception in general. But is there just this feeling from the outside that that's something specific that needs to be pointed out, or just curious what the general feel of people is?
Yeah.
Is that just the way it was listed on the form prior to you
Correct.
inheriting the form?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So historically, the documents kind of stayed the same, with the exception of adding or subtracting things as the statute changes. But if there are more items that we can clear up in just our language that isn't the statute, I am absolutely welcome to your suggestions.
If I can make a comment, Brittany, I think that when we read the original form that came forward, not this new one, it does say factual, unbiased information about contraception and condoms, and I'm wondering if they decided to put it up there to kind of balance those two out, but we could take the word out because it is the same thing.
I agree with Brittany.
So I would recommend that we remove
On both
condom-
areas?
Yeah, just
Everywhere it
contraception
appears.
is contraception, and that's how we say it. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could probably say demonstrations on how to use any contraceptive means.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this? Okay.
Okay, so are we going to go through the rest of these?
Yeah.
Good. You want to just go on that page and then say yes and no to each of the written.
I'm going to separate mine.
I guess if we don't have any objections other than that one, we should just send it in.
Okay.
I didn't have really any other, did you?
Mm-mm.
They're all good except
Okay.
take
So clarify. We want the ones that are stricken. You want me to delete those and then add in the pre-checked, the clarification of why 2 of them were checked in advance.
Yep, this page is fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, I do have one question because option 3 it says prior to deciding, and they're asking to strike that line out, and then so I almost like the prior to deciding because then it's basically saying I'm still thinking about this and I haven't decided, because otherwise it's just option 3. It says I'm going to contact you as if that's my only. It's like a dead end option, and so prior to deciding means I need more information and then I'm going to move on from there. So I would recommend just leaving prior to deciding in.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I think it also helps the parent understand that they still have one more decision they have to make, because otherwise the school's kind of in limbo because they need a yes or no at some point. So that I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Vice Chair,
Uh-huh.
if I may, on option 2, participate in the scheduled activities is crossed out. What activities are we not thinking of that I'm worried about? Why would that be crossed out? Are there no activities in discussion about this?
Jody?
The suggestion is if you cross it out, it would just read to participate in the discussions as described above, and not separating the word activities and discussion as separate things in a classroom, and just leaving it as it's one thing in the classroom.
So then would we want to add in option 5 and say, I grant permission for my child to opt in the scheduled activities. So if it is separate, that they either it's just the discussion or just the activity. I don't know. No, you're shaking your head.
I'm shaking my head. I say no, Lisa, only because, discussion and activities would be synonyms. Okay, and so I think we're okay there.
Okay. Does that make sense, Lisa? Why do I keep looking at the ceiling?
We went over that already.
I know.
Just look at the camera behind you. I can see you. I don't know.
I have.
Because under option 2, they can participate except for these things, and parents can say what they don't want them to participate in.
Yeah, and I guess that would mean that the parents would have to know exactly and see the curriculum all the way through and the activities all the way through.
And they can.
They can.
Yeah, no, I know they can.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have
yes.
one. Okay, Jody, at the top of the form, it says parents must receive this form 2 weeks before. What's the latest they can turn it in? The day that it's presented?
They can turn it in. The student can return with it being filled out from the parent just the day of instruction. If they are late, so they would be excused from the first day, but they could bring it the second day, and then
Okay,
they
so
would be.
they are not in the room if it opt out. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Do we need to have a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to accept this form
Any discussion?
on
With
first
the-
reading and send it to the board on second final reading.
With the changes.
Okay,
With the changes.
yeah, with the changes.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Jody. We're going to move on to the information.
Thank you.
Which is the plan to update board rules related to HB 313.
That's me.
That's Angie.
Thank you. Because we have two charter school related rules and one that does relate to the activities of charter school authorizers, I wanted to clarify because normally had these two rules, and I'm talking about the next two items, which are R277470 and R277481, had they not been up for their 5-year continuation, we would not have brought these two rules to you at this time, but would have waited until the time when we're going to be presenting all of the charter school rules that relate to authorization and maybe some other things later this year. Probably right now we're looking at, so maybe I should back up a little bit. This last session, the legislature passed HB 313, and in that bill you'll remember that the legislature amended the requirement for the board to review and approve or deny charter school applications. And in lieu of that, we are now going to enact rules to govern the authorizers process, whereby they review and then approve or deny charter school applications. And that bill takes effect legally on January 1 of 2019. And legally, we have up until about 6 months after January 1 to enact rules. Although we have that time, our plan as staff is we have a group of people that are going to start working through preliminary drafts of the rules, and then our plan is to bring those draft rules to law and licensing beginning in August or September. Part of what we're balancing as staff is that a lot of the rules have very heavy financial impact and data impact, and our financial staff are very much involved right now in year-end close of our budgets, as well as assisting LEAs to comply with that and getting the grants management system in place. And so realistically, we do not believe that we'll have anything that we can bring to you before August or September. With that background, the other thing that's helpful to know is, again, I think it's helpful to have those rules all go to the Office of Administrative Rules at about the same time that the bill is going to be effective. So if we have a goal, and this is my goal, that the board is able to take final action on those rules in November or as late as December, then we can have the rules take effect at about the same time as the bill. So wanted to give that background to you, let you know that staff is beginning work on that, although realistically with some of the activities that are going on with our financial staff, we'll begin that process more in depth and in earnest, probably starting in July. And then we will start bringing rules to you optimistically beginning in August, but probably more likely in September. So that's the background on the process for bringing rules to implement HB 313. Do you have any questions or feedback or suggestions on that?
No.
Okay.
Lisa?
No, not that comes to mind. Angie, though, if you could just add HB 313 or 313
13. Mm-hmm.
13 to board doc, that'd be awesome.
Yes.
It's
there.
It's on there.
Is it there?
It's
All
not a
right.
rule, it's just
Then
It's the
The
language
bill.
of the bill.
Yes.
2.2.
The language of the statute won't actually show up on the legislature's website until January 1 of 2019. And so I uploaded the bill because that's the only way you would see what the language will look like.
Okay.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Okay, Brittany?
In the process of coming up with the draft, will you be working with the state charter school board and other authorizers, and kind of what is their current process of that they've developed over time for approving a charter school?
We absolutely had planned to include Jennifer Lambert and others of her staff. And that's a good question to maybe see if there are other authorizers, maybe a district authorizer that, or one of, I guess there's only one, maybe there are two higher ed authorizers to involve them in that process. But absolutely, when the rules come forward to the board, there will also be the opportunity. We're anticipating that it's not going to be one committee meeting. My guess is it's going to take a couple of committee meetings and opportunities for stakeholders to come and provide feedback. But we did think it would be helpful just as staff to even just have something that people could start with, you know, start looking at. And so that is a good suggestion. Oftentimes, because Jennifer Lambert and the State Charter School Board staff are here in the building, it is easiest for us to do those meetings internally first. And because we are including quite a few staff members, even from USBE, like data, finance, teaching and learning, federal programs, et cetera. So we will, the question is when. So I'll take that into consideration of whether we want to include maybe some of those other authorizers before we bring the rules to you. Is that your request? Is that what I'm maybe hearing?
Yeah, I think the intent of the legislation was really to kind of look at authorization in a broader spectrum, you know, not just the state charter school
Right.
board, and kind of leveling that playing field of all authorizers. And so I think it would be beneficial to look at authorization from that point of view as we go forward and drafting that rule, because it will apply. These are some new things that will be applying to all authorizers rather than that. So
Maybe what we could do is once we have some drafts, but before we upload them to board docs and present them to the board, is we could hold a stakeholder meeting and include and kind of make a notice. No, it wouldn't be something that board members could attend if they wanted, but maybe something a little more informal than a committee meeting, but more formal than just a meeting that we would meet here in staff, and then try to send that out and publicize it, and then just have a stakeholder meeting here in the boardroom where we get feedback from.
That sounds fantastic.
So that's what I think I'll do. And then if you'd like, I can inform you all of when that's going to happen. And then if you'd like to join, you could join us.
Great.
Thank you, Angie.
Okay. We'll do that.
Thank you. So, any other questions or comments? Anybody in the public have a comment or? Okay, moving rapidly along to 2.3, R277470, Charter Schools and their General Revisions. This is an amendment and continuation.
Yes, and that will be me.
And it's
present
Angie
that.
again.
So as I mentioned just a moment ago, both R277470 and the next rule, R277481, are up for their 5-year review and continuation. And you probably noticed that this rule hasn't been amended in quite some time because there's still some references in there to USOE, and the numbering system was off. And so this is before you to make a motion to continue it. That is the key thing that we need to do, although, because we do not want to lose these rules. But then second, to update them technically to be in compliance with the Office of Administrative Rules Rule Drafting Manual. And there were some references to USOE where we did change, and I believe it's actually in the next rule, so I think I'm getting ahead of myself. This rule is really just technical, and there weren't any substantive corrections.
Okay. Any questions or comments about R277470? Okay, anybody in the public want to say anything? Great, I'll entertain motion.
Vice Chair, I propose that we accept the updated version of R277 470 with the updated revisions, technical revisions. On first, is it, okay, someone needs to guide me. First reading and second, and send it to the board on second and final reading?
Yes.
Yes, and continue, and a motion for continuation also.
And a motion for continuation also.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Moving on to R277481. It's kind of the same thing.
It is. Thank you. Again, this rule is up for continuation and 5-year review. There were a couple of references in this rule that referenced USOE that we did change to the school's authorizer, because I think that when it was talking about USOE, it was referring to state charter school board staff. And so I just wanted to bring your attention to those lines 81, 83, and I think around 150. Other than that, all of the changes are, again, technical in nature, renumbering, rewriting to put it in an active voice, etc. So, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Yes, Brittany.
Okay, and so, sorry, I was trying to listen and find at the same time. So what you were saying was, so for example, on line 106, the reason why that says state charter school board, where in other places it replaces it with superintendent or staff, so that it's not a policy change, it's just here's what we're already doing or how that's already handled. What?
Yes, and I think this is one that needs a lot more work. This rule almost needs to be repealed and reenacted, because it is drafted only with one authorizer generally in mind, as opposed to applying to all authorizers. So in lieu of saying an authorizer, I think the current statute actually states that if schools need technical assistance, charter schools need technical assistance, that the state charter school board does that. But starting January 1, that is not the case. It's may, and actually other authorizers may also provide technical assistance as well as USBE. So that's current practice. Okay. It's old language, and this is not what it will look like starting January 1.
Okay. So, anybody in the public want to say anything about this? Yes. Jennifer, come on up. Introduce yourself.
Jennifer Lambert, Executive Director for the State Charter School Board. I don't know if this really is meaningful because this is going to be all reworked anyway, but there are some cases where the superintendent was placed, or the State Charter School Board was placed, where it is not reflecting current practice. And so I just wanted to make you aware, for example, the very first one where it replaces US, so line 51. The notification actually comes from the authorizer, because it's the authorizer putting them on warning, not the superintendent. And so I don't know if you care about that, because this is going to be, that's why I haven't brought it up or made a big deal of this, because I know that we're going to be redoing this. Okay. But it is, there are some things that we could
51,
maybe.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, we might as well. From the school's authorizer.
Yeah.
Would that be a good change, do you think? Just say school's authorizer there.
And I can send you if there's any others that just to reflect current practice.
Well, is there anything else that you could quickly just tell us, and then we can maybe have an amendment to adopt those? Or is it a law on it?
No, it's just something I would just, give me a little more time and I'll be able to get that to you. Go.
Yes.
Line 83 seems to have a substitution that's
there's an
different than the other substitution where it's superintendent and the school authorizer.
That's true.
You want to say something?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Jennifer, will you go back to 51 again and explain to me why it's not in practice, but it's her responsibility, or this building's responsibilities, or the board's responsibility to make sure this happens, and she's our designee.
It isn't. So that's what I'm saying. So the authorizer, the warning and probation status is what the authorizer does. It's not what the State Board of Education does. If you guys want to have a warning and probation process, that's something that you guys, I would imagine, could develop. But what we're talking about here is the State Charter School Board's process of putting schools on warning and probation. Therefore, it comes from them, not from the superintendent.
But can I make a comment? I think The reason we put superintendent in there is what if it were a special ed issue, or what if it's a federal program issue that they're on warning status for? Then I think it says they may seek, support. What does it say? Or may seek technical assistance from superintendent and the authorizer's staff. We could just keep it as the authorizer, but
As I said, that's why I hadn't brought it up before, because it's not. I know we're changing this, so.
yeah.
Okay.
And it seems, because we don't have a formal process for probation and warning at USBE, if there's something that happens in those areas that have legal issues, we usually just take action of some sort, right? Whereas the charter school board has a process and a whole thing around, and charter schools are aware of what it means to go into warning and how you get there, what it means to go into probation and how you get there. And so they have a process that's communicated to charter schools of what that is. So it's different than just, hey, you broke a random law that we heard about and now I'm going to come in and try and find remediation. So I think they're different.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Vice Chair,
Yes.
that is the only one that I see that is
Okay.
not reflecting current practice.
Okay.
So
Great.
really the motion could be to take out separate superintendent and on 83, and then to add schools authorizer on 51 in lieu of superintendent.
Great. Anybody want to make that motion, or are there any other? Yes.
Sidebar, Squirrel.
Yes.
In your process of warning, is there a way for them, I forgot what the word would be.
Warning, probation.
Yeah, but if they're put on warning or probation where they can appeal that, is that also in your process to appeal to the state board?
No, the only appeal that's just kind of it's an internal thing. We've actually been tightening that up recently, and our board will probably be adopting policies in regards to that in the next few months as well. So it's kind of it's awkward that it's in board rule to begin with, because it's an authorizer's internal policy. Where the appeal comes in is if there is a motion to close the school, and that's
So
where
only at closing, they can't appeal a warning status. So a school can't say,
they
I
can
want to
appeal.
this.
I'm trying to think of the appeal rights. I think they can appeal any administrative decision by an authorizer, but that's not generally done.
Because they would be appealing back to the people who have authorized them, not to an outside piece.
That's usually, I mean, there's discussions that happen. It's not an administrative function that, oh, they just automatically go on warning or they just automatically go on probation. I mean, there's a lot of talk and process.
I get that. I'm just saying what it does is it just silos them. They're asking mom the same question they're asking dad. Does that make sense? That the person who gives them the authorization is the one who's saying, now you're on warning. They have nowhere else to say, you are out of bounds, but for putting us on warning.
You can make that
I'm
argument
just
with
thinking.
anyone. I mean,
I know. I'm just
anytime.
thinking about it, but in this case, I mean,
That's why when it
it's
gets
still on
to
warning is
so you're
it,
just
and-
talking about a process. A warning
Yeah.
isn't. It has no repercussions other than the warning status itself.
I know.
There's no
it's
loss
not
of
just
funds.
about the warning, Jen. It's bigger than that.
Right. You
for
aren't
me, it's-
talking about loss of funds or anything there. When it gets to something that is a big decision, say like closure, there is an appeal rights there, or the authorization, there is an appeal rights there. Because those are the actual decisions. When you're talking about processes that lead up to those decisions, there isn't in statute or rule any method for appeal other than they can appeal any administrative decision.
I'd like to make a motion
Mhm.
to approve R 277481 with the amendments and on continuation, and send to the full board.
Yeah,
Draft 2.
as a-
Dang it! As amended.
You did a really good job, though, Laura.
On first reading and second final reading for the board.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I just
Anybody else in favor? Aye. Okay, great.
Can I just clarify, because I don't know if there was a actual motion to amend. Did your motion?
She said with the amendments.
Okay, and the amendments, just so that I can make it clear, are to strike the words superintendent on line 51 and change that to schools authorizer, as well as strike superintendent and on lines on line 83.
Right.
Yes, that is
Great.
what it
Okay.
is.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Moving along, we'll now replace Angie with Ben. And move to the next.
Replace me?
With the next 5 items. No, you can come over here. You can sit right over here.
Tag team.
Ben is now on deck. Okay. Ben Rasmussen is now here. And we're going to move on to action item 2.5, R277525, special educator stipends.
Leah, do you want to come up for this one too? So this is the rule on the special educator stipend. It is administered by the special education department. It's up for its 5-year review. So we have made mostly technical changes, a couple of things that Leah asked us to fix in the rule, and then it's up for your consideration for continuation and amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
That's all.
That's all you have to say. Is this, I'm looking through this. Wait, is this different than the TSSP, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So this rule provides specific stipends to special education teachers for working extra days at the beginning or at the
Oh
end
yeah,
of the
that's
school
right.
year.
That's right. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Brittany?
I just was curious how much money is appropriated to this yearly.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. So the legislature appropriates an amount, which, to be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember the calculation, and I remember the amount they appropriated this year. We just did the calculation this week. So the LEAs send us all the teachers that are going to participate. They send us a list, and we take the figure that the legislature gives us, divided by a $200 a day stipend, and figure out how many days, including a half day, how many days that figure would pay for the number of teachers that are submitted. So for instance, for the next school year, it's 5 days. This past school year, we were able to finance 4.5 days, but the appropriation was a little bit bigger, and so we're able to finance 5 days. The teachers can choose to put those days before and or after the school year to do paperwork. It's very specific. I'm sure you saw in the rule. They can't use it for professional development. It's for paperwork, for IEP and file compliance. So that most of them choose to do a couple days before the school year, and then the rest, however many are left at the end of the school year, to get their files ready and to clean their files up before they leave.
Okay.
But I don't remember the exact figure.
Can I just go and follow up?
Yeah.
Tara? So is that, you said it was more this year than last year. Is that because it's calculated with some other special ed funds that grow?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
it's calculated along the MSP.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.
And can I add something, Chair? And because it costs about $700,000 for a full day, so about $350,000 for a half day, depending on how many teachers there are each year. But that's basically for the past few years what it's cost. So if we can't fund a half day, the $350,000, we get to carry that over to the next day, and then we can add that to whatever new amount there is. So that's why there's also some fluctuation in the amount. A couple years ago, we were actually the original appropriation funding amount, based on the number of teachers that were in Cactus at the time the original appropriation was made, was for 4 days. 2 days before the school year and 2 days after the school year. That's how we did the original calculation. But just based on the number of teachers and the appropriation, it's changed every year. One of the years we were actually able to provide 6 days because we had enough carry forward and because the appropriation went up a little. But we had a little carry forward this year from last year because we were only able to do the 4.5 days. And we had about $300,000 left over, which was almost another half day, but not a full half day. So we carried that over. So that's why we're able to do 5 days this year.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Anybody from the audience want to say anything? Royce? Okay. Just thought I'd pick on you. I'm practicing being a teacher one day.
Yeah, pick on Tim. I'd like to make a motion
Yes.
to approve R277525 with the amendments or the changes on draft 1 on first reading and send to the board on second and final reading
And continue.
and continuation.
Yes, so approve and continue.
Approve and continue. I'll get this before I'm dead.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving right along to R277, thank you. 617, Smart School Technology Program. It's an amendment and continuation.
So this is another rule that's up for its 5-year review. There is currently no funding for the Smart School Technology Program. It's kind of been replaced, I think, by the Digital Teaching and Learning Program, but it is still in statute. And so the intention or the recommendation here is to continue the rule. And I think staff is going to look at making a recommendation that the statute be repealed in the next session, at which point we could repeal the rule. But as long as we have the statute, we need the rule.
Okay. Any questions or comments or concerns? Okay, first Angie and then Brittany.
I was just going to let you know there's a couple of programs we're recently becoming aware of that, and there'll be another one I think coming up, where there's no longer any funding. They were pilot programs, or like this one where the funding was diverted to another one. And so we have Chuck Curry is working on looking at the COBE and kind of looking at what we have in statute and compiling a list of any programs where we no longer receive funding. And then we could provide that to the Education Interim Committee. They're going to be doing a recodification process this year. And so we can work with them to get those killed.
I just texted her. What is
Is that everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Okay, Brittany.
Okay.
Good.
I move that we approve amendments and continue and the continuation of R277617 draft 1 on first reading and forward the recommendation to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Perfect.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, wait, I didn't ask if anybody in the does anybody have any comments? Okay, great. All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Aye.
thank you. 277411, school district sponsored school seminars on youth protection related issues. Well, there's a mouthful for you.
So on R277411, this is a program that is continue. The program is still in place, but the provisions of the rule are not necessarily longer. If you look, most of them were setting some deadlines to provide certain information to the board by 2013. Everything that's needed for this program is contained in the statute, and so the recommendation is just to repeal the rule.
Okay. Any comments on that? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. This isn't right.
You just say, I move
Okay.
that we...
Okay.
Oh, you're on the wrong one.
Wait. Am I?
Oh, no, you're not. Sorry.
No. I move that we repeal our 277411 in its entirety
Okay, all in favor?
and send to the board for second final reading.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 277619, school leadership skills development amendment and continuation.
Okay, so this is similar to the Smart Schools Technology Program rule that we just talked about. This is one that was, I think, a 3-year pilot program, if I remember correctly. The funding for that has lapsed, but the statute is still in place and requires rulemaking. So the recommendation would be to continue this rule, and again, we'll look at whether or not we can repeal the statute on this later.
Okay. Yes, Brittany.
I move that we approve the amendments and continuation of R277619 draft 1 on first reading and forward a favorable recommendation to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Great. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, we have an active, exciting class of people out here.
Not much to discuss.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving along, we're going to...
We can get excited here now.
Oh, now it's Ben, Lorraine, and Dave Thomas.
So, do you want to wait till
Dave gets here.
Let's go to-
Do you feel comfortable speaking to it? Would it be better if Dave?
It's-
It's
I would suggest Dave come up
I
for that one
agree.
because he's the one that's pushing it.
Well, you're on 2003 board resolutions,
Okay.
2.10.
So this was something requested by Lorraine Austin. Essentially, we want to clarify what is and what isn't a resolution and what a resolution means. So we have a number of board resolutions currently. A lot of them, they kind of fall into two camps. One camp is those resolutions which say this is what the board thinks on a particular issue and we hope the legislature, the governor, somebody will do something about it. Then we have a number of resolutions which establish advisory committees. Resolutions are really kind of non-binding opinion type items. And so what we want to do is clarify that a resolution, I think the definition is spelled out in this policy that we're proposing, but it's basically a non-binding opinion piece for the board can vote on. So we want to make clear that a resolution lasts no more than 4 years, and the time the resolution lasts will be specified in the resolution. And then those resolutions which have been used to create board advisory committees, we're recommending that through the policy that we change those to policies, and we're giving specific numbers to the ones that have already been passed. So that we'll just renumber those on the board's website. So those will be policies going forward, would be the proposal.
Okay. Brittany.
What's the purpose of having the former board resolutions in this policy and not just as a separate motion so that they wouldn't be stuck in here forever?
No, I'm not sure I understand.
So in this,
You mean the expiration provision?
So this is policy number 2003, and under Section 3, it lists those advisory groups that were formerly resolutions and now they're turning into policy. And so if we pass this policy, those particular things will be stuck here forever. When can we just take a motion to say Board Resolution 216-1 access will be a policy I, right? And then they wouldn't be stuck in this policy forever.
We just figured that was I just kind of figured that was a simpler way than doing eight separate motions when we could just put it in this policy, and the next time you amend it, you could take that out. But
And then future board members would be like, why is that in there? And they'd be like, I don't know, maybe it should be. So anyways.
it would just be a matter of taking extra motions, but that's certainly one way.
I just have a question. So is the idea, Ben, then that we would just make those resolutions as board policies, and then the
Yes,
group,
they would just be
the board
converted
would
to-
not need to adopt each of those individual resolutions?
Right, they would just be converted to
So-
policies.
I think that's why, but we.
Okay, I'm going to try and speak for you. I should never do that because Brittany is so brilliant. However, I think her point is that we're writing the words Board Resolution 2016-this. Isn't there a way to say that we're going to convert these in some information piece so that, and then say this is now what they're called, instead of having it in the policy, in our bylaws? Have it that this is becoming this.
That's another way to do it. I mean, this was just my attempt to make it a simple one motion process. But if you wanted to do that separately, well, you'd be adopting the policy and then adopting something else that changes those.
I'm okay for two motions because I like to clean it up now rather
Fair
than have
enough.
to clean it up later.
Okay.
So we'll be striking that subsection 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd rather have a clean policy.
There'll be a second
It is.
motion to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any comment? Okay. Brittany, you want to make a motion?
Okay, I move
two?
that we adopt policy number 2003, draft 1, with the exclusion of section 3.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mm.
Okay.
And then the board approval.
And then the board.
It's a committee
Yeah.
motion.
Okay, moving on to R277.
Wait,
Oh,
sorry.
yes. Oh, we need the second
Sorry,
motion. Sorry.
I move that the following resolutions are hereby adopted as board policies. Board Resolution 2016-1 Access, Board Resolution 2016-2 APAC, Board Resolution 2016-3 USEEP, Board Resolution 2016-4 TAC, Board Resolution 2017-1
Good luck.
SDGAG. SDGAG, Board
Libby needs to
Resolution
work on her acronym.
2017-2, SDUAG, Board Resolution 2017-3, SDPAG.
Student data privacy group.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Moving on to 277463, class size average and pupil teacher ratio reporting. We have an amendment there.
So we have a couple of law clerks who are in the process of going through all our rules, updating the statutory references in the rule. As they went through this rule, there was one particular provision you'll see on line 8, 53A3602.5, which is no longer a good statute anymore. Because this rule hadn't been updated, we just decided that we would bring it back for your consideration. So we've done some technical updates to the rule, and we're just asking the committee to amend and continue the rule with the technical updates.
Any discussion? Any comment? Okay.
My turn.
Mm-hmm.
Turn on your mic.
I turned it on and off. Okay. Wait. Hold on. I'm going to do Brittany thing. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the amendments to our 277463 on first reading and approve. It didn't say that in here.
Well, please continue.
Okay, approve and continue on 277463 on first reading and forward to the board on second final reading.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great.
We threw you a loop there, Laura.
Jeannie was in here. I wonder where she went.
Is Dave coming up?
Well, we could go to board.
If you'd like, I can do.
Are you going to take it?
Okay, we can do, I don't know where Joel Coleman is.
Actually, I think Ben's off the hook.
You're off the hook now.
Okay.
Does he need to be here for board policy?
I'll stay. I'm not leaving.
I
Okay.
got that one. Do you
Are
want
we
me to-
doing board? Yeah.
Do you want to go to,
We're going to go to 2.13, board policy 4001.
Doing Dave Thomas's?
are you going to cover down for Dave?
I can try. He's in a compensation discussion right now downstairs.
Oh, we'll wait until the end.
Yeah, I could do 4001.
Okay.
Do one of you have Whitney's number too?
Or Jeannie. I don't know where Jeannie went.
Because then you could text Whitney and let her know that we could go
Okay.
to the data.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead while we're locating other staff. I think we've just moved so quickly, we're blowing everybody's mind, and they're just unprepared. Board Policy 4001 was one of the first board policies that the board adopted back in early 2016, and so it is out of date. It includes references to USOE as well as requires the board, the USDB meetings to be a certain amount of time, and it references evening meetings. And so we've eliminated all of those to be a little broader to allow you as a board more discretion in determining the time as well as the length of the meetings. And then we've updated references from USOE to the board. The only two, I would say, that's most significant additions to this board policy are at the very end, which are the approval of annual budget and expenditures, and simply states that the board approves the annual budget of USDB and that USDB will provide accounting records, et cetera, and provide those to the board. So
Okay.
it's mostly technical cleanup and putting it in the format that we now use for our board policies.
Okay.
And did you want to, looks like we have some.
Yes. Yes.
I have a question, Chair, first.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Just for clarity, I have a question on board members will not participate in the USDB Council. Is this, I understand we can attend, but does this preclude us from doing anything if we attend those meetings and being part of the conversation? I just want to make sure that we're not handcuffing us here not to be able to verbalize things.
You know, that's a good question. If you look above at the bottom of page 1, you'll see that the old language said board members no longer participate on the USDB Advisory Council, so that the way I put it in here is a restatement. I do not remember the reason for that change. Joel would be a better person.
Just for clarity, I used to be on the advisory team for USDB, and I would go to their meetings and be a part of that. And I realized maybe it would be better not participate, but not be a member of, or I'm just a little concerned about that.
Are not members of.
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
Tara? So when I believe, so I could be wrong, but I believe that when we redid all those resolutions that we just passed as policy, one of those was we looked at the advisory board as one of those when we did the look at all the advisory committees. And one of the things that we did was removing board members as a member of any committee that advises the board. So I think that was just changed. And so I would think because that's already contained in another document, do we even need that line at all? Because we can double check, but I'm pretty sure that there is a document that outlines the makeup of that committee. So,
And board members are likely not members.
Them board members are not members anymore. So.
Okay.
It's on.
And you have to identify yourself.
Look, I'm Bonnie Henry. I'm with UEA. I'm the Eastern Utah UNISERV Director and former employee of USDB, serving as USDB EA President for 8 years and an employee for 28 years. So I've had a lot of background and history, but I have a letter that I'd like to read, an email I'd like to read to you regarding these two issues.
Okay.
This is from Lori Ruth, the current USDB EA President. And she says, "Dear board members, we would like to thank you for the work that you do on behalf of the students and families that we serve. As president of USDB EA Association, we are mindful of your hard work and support, and thank you. We understand that there are two proposed changes to be discussed and voted on Friday, May 4th. We are concerned about the two potential proposals as listed below. One, there is a proposal to have a liaison on the USDB Advisory Council and USBE to be the superintendent, and that the USBE board member will not participate on the Advisory Council. Second concern is the proposal and policy change for USDB USDB school board meetings to be held during school hours rather than after school, when teachers and families can attend more easily. We would like to request that a member from the board or a volunteer be appointed to attend the Advisory Council meetings as an active member. When joint meetings have been held, there's been wonderful opportunity for our members of the two boards to foster positive relationships. Our second request is to reinstate USDB and USBE board meetings at times in the afternoon or after school hours, so teachers and parents were able to attend and participate in civic dialogue. Again, we thank you for your support as we work with our students and families and as you represent us across the state. Sincerely, Lori Ruth, USDB EA President."
Okay, so I guess I can ask a question. Can I ask a question, Angie? Okay, so I'll wave my hand. Okay, so it says consistent with 277-800. So we changed the rule, but I can't access it. But it seems to me we changed the rule. Help me. On 800. That. What did we do?
Do you want me to go get it? I have a copy.
The 800.
Yeah. Do you want it?
I can't get mine to come up.
I think that what Vice Chair Cummins mentioned earlier might be the trigger, because our 277-800 does designate the superintendent of the schools for the deaf and blind as essentially your liaison or your representative.
Right.
But I think that, and
It's okay. I'll answer
speaking for
questions.
you, please let me know that there used to be a board member on
Yes.
the advisory council, and that's what you're speaking to.
Yes.
And that was not something that's in 800, but was a decision made by, do you remember there was a 2-year kind of advisory
Right.
council group that then established all of those the resolutions that were previously mentioned that took board members off of them.
Right. We went off of a lot of stuff.
Yes.
I think we left it to just 2 or 3 things. That's it.
The only reason that they want to have it reinstated is that because you are literally USDB's school board. I know that you're the state school board, but if you work in Jordan, you have the Jordan School Board or the Canyon School Board, your USDB school board. And so they wanted to have you be an active participant in that and be able to then come and speak at your board meetings. So I know that you're under a huge time crunch and what you try to cram in, but that's what they're looking at.
Okay.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
So when those decisions were made, it wasn't just USDB and the advisory committee. It was the concept of how do you have a committee advise the board if there's a board member that has say on that committee. And so it was that concept of truly becoming an advisory committee to the full board. And so what the intent was in these conversations that were had over that couple of years was how do we create better communication to the full board, to committees that advise the full board, and not just have one member who sits and who can make motions and then come back and give their opinion to the full board. And so we went to the idea of, okay, every time an advisory committee has a meeting, they should send their agenda and the time of the meeting, and any board member can attend and listen and meet people and have that kind of that conversation. But then that committee would actually make formal recommendations to the board, not just having a liaison saying, oh, this is what I heard at this advisory committee, but really creating that strengthening the ability of an advisory committee to inform the board and to affect policy and affect change. And so that was the intent behind kind of that move. And I think it's just encouraging board members to be in attendance and to get to know those advisory committees is where kind of sometimes that falls through. But
Okay, I just know that, our teachers are supposed to be in their classrooms and they really do want to participate. And so because I've been there 28 years, so I have a lot of the institutional memory and history of it. And we could come before the state board and not complain and not whine, but say, you're going to pass this policy. This is how it might impact in my classroom or might impact my students. Sorry.
So I think you might be talking about two things,
Yes,
right?
I
So
am
the
talking
advisory,
two things.
Okay, so the advisory committee, we're looking like at a committee coming together,
Right.
making a formal motion and creating a formal recommendation for the board. And that's the intent of any advisory
Right.
committee. And then secondly, having meetings at times when people can participate. And we've heard a lot of feedback over the last little while about that concept. And so for our next year's schedule, we're considering, what would those options be? And so that is definitely a conversation that's been had, and
We appreciate that greatly.
considered. But yeah, so as far as the advisory committee goes, I think that motion was made probably a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was a couple
to really just strengthen the ability of an advisory committee instead of just being kind of a place to talk about concepts where they can make a formal recommendation that says, here's where we think the board should move on this idea concept, or here's how this is going to affect our students, et cetera.
Okay.
So,
I would be happy to send an email to leadership, because we did have that decision made several years ago. You are not the only entity that's come and asked, where are you? Why aren't you here? And
Right.
maybe that's something that we as a board need to talk about. What the purpose was of pulling ourselves off of all these different committees and entities, and then has that worked? Has it been beneficial? And do we need to look at maybe going back on some of these? So
I would
because we're
appreciate
doing
that
this-
consideration, yeah.
yeah, because it's consistent with our rule where we did this. So I would be happy to send an email to leadership to say we may want to consider putting a member back on the
Advisory
USDB Advisory Council.
Okay,
So-
thank you so much.
And then we will be looking at our schedules. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, may I have another thought?
Yes.
Maybe that email could be forwarded, because that's not coming from her.
I thought
It came from someone else.
Lori Ruth, I think, sent it to your board email addresses already.
I read something like that, but I didn't know that was the same
What this
one.
was?
I didn't know it was the same
Okay, I'll have it forwarded to you.
Okay.
Thank you. I have notes all over it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is an action item to,
To adopt,
anybody want to,
recommend the board approve. approve or approve in the board.
Yes.
I move that we approve policy number 4001 with the recommended amendments, striking 5, section 2.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Lisa? She's gone.
Aye.
Oh,
No, I'm not gone.
She's on mute, so that's her minute to get up.
okay. Great. Let's see. Let's go back over. Dave Thomas is here, so we'll go back up to 2.9, and then we're going to go to 2.12 with Jeannie, and then we'll finish up with Whitney. Okay.
Happy to be here.
Do you want to describe the change? And I've got it up here on the screen.
Oh, okay, thank you. This is a suggested change to bylaws. There was a concern that for the purposes of kind of leveling the playing field among all of the board members, there were some that were recording and using either by recording or by live streaming from personal devices, using that portion of the meeting or some portion of the meeting or aiming it in certain directions. And so the concern is that to level the playing field in the bylaws, the board, from a legal standpoint, these are all open meetings, and recordings or broadcasting or anything else are completely legal. But within the board itself, this is for use within itself, that we can use the bylaws to govern the actions of board members. And so it suggested that the official streaming that is provided by the equipment that's already in the boardroom, that be used as kind of the official broadcast, that it can be used, can be tapped into, or used in any way, but that will be the default, and that personal uses for recordings or anything else won't be used for any other purpose within the board action within board actions. And therefore, the suggested is that we amend Article 9 to include, Article 8 and Article 9 be amended in the following manner.
Vice Chair,
Yes?
if I may have a question.
Yes.
Who brought this forward? And does not a board member, being part of the public as well, have a right to have a First Amendment right to stream any event or a public meeting if it is a public meeting?
Well, let's have AAG Thomas answer that.
Yeah, the answer to the first question, I don't know who brought it forward. I was just asked to look into this as far as it's concerned.
Wait. Hold off. Okay. Angie's going to answer one part of the question, and then we'll go back to Dave.
I can give a little bit of context. I didn't actually receive the complaint or notice myself, but there was a member of the public who attended a meeting of ours, and there was a live stream video of a board member that was then sent to that member of the public, and there were some disparaging things said in relation to the live stream, and the person was didn't know they had been recorded and were upset, and so that was then brought to attention of a staff member who then told the superintendency, and we just made the board leadership aware of that issue, that we've had people who attend our meetings and so we were talking about whether we want to make an announcement so that people understand that could be a possibility. And then there was a discussion about whether it's intimidating for members of the public if they're being live streamed and then there's public disparaging comments about those people. So that was the context. It's been a discussion just because we received a complaint from a member of the public.
Okay.
May I respond, Vice Chair?
Sure.
Vice Chair Warner. If that is the case, then that same complaint could be used against the USBE for live streaming the same exact event and having on the YouTube channel disparaging comments on the YouTube channel. To me, that it just seems redundant.
Okay.
And ridiculous, I think, because as board members, we talk about reaching our constituents, and our constituents, they follow us on social media. And so sometimes where they can't or they don't access the official board camera, sometimes they will log in and follow a board member's live streaming of a meeting. And, I don't. We're in a world of social media and a lot of rudeness and comments that are just ridiculous. And so I don't think we should limit a board member's right to connect with their constituency just because public comment may offend one person. I think we're hedging onto constitutional rights here, and so I just want to be very cautious.
Thank you. Board Member Belknap?
I'm sorry, going ahead of you.
I'm sorry.
I just want you to know I did not make a complaint on this, Lisa, but I find it very offensive to have a camera on me for 12 hours when we're in board meetings. And where I sit, I am on that camera for that entire time. And I know that when I'm live streamed, I'm on when I'm speaking or the person next to me is speaking. And so if we're going to not do something like this, then I would want that person to be on the camera and not myself. And so I actually appreciate this opportunity not to have that happen to me.
Okay. Any other? Board Member Cummins, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was going to say, do you want me to address
Yeah.
it?
Okay. Sorry. We're going to go back to AAG Thomas.
Okay. Let me kind of jump in this way. There are no constitutional issues here. First Amendment rights you have First Amendment rights versus the government. The government can't do this. And we're not, what we're doing is we're talking about bylaws and about this is the board governing itself. And so it's how you want to play the rules and how you want to play the game. And what this is suggesting is that there's a leveling of the playing field, which is that sure, any member of the public can record any part of an open meeting, but this is having to do with how you interact with each other and how you portray each other. And so if you can have, for example, as Laura has indicated, if somebody decides they're going to stream the meeting and show Laura the whole time and then make comments about her, you're saying, well, look, I need to have notice. I mean, it's a fairness issue. It's not a constitutional issue. This is not a limitation. The government is not curtailing how you, what you say or how you say it. What it is, it's how you, board members, want to govern yourselves. If you're saying, look, what we want to do is we want to be able to reach our constituency, but we want to do it in a fair way so that everyone is receiving the same information that from a constituency base as everybody else. And so I don't have to worry about how I'm being portrayed because I know I'm being portrayed in a neutral fashion by way of a generalized stream that's coming from the board. And so what you're doing is you're just defaulting to say are you going to use the default broadcast, and whether you broadcast that back through whatever social media channel you want, it's all coming from exactly the same source. It's not coming from a source where you could say, well, you're holding me in bad light, it's not very fair, it's not something that I've agreed to, and I appreciate being able to see it that way. So from a constitutional standpoint, there's no constitutional issue because this is not the government curtailing how you and what you say and how you say it. This is, as board members, how you want to govern yourselves and how you want to interact within yourselves. And because you're handling as a board members, you're saying, we agree as board members that these are the rules that we'll play by. And that's what this is suggesting. So it's really more of a fair play issue.
I would like to point out that I'm going through the YouTube channel. I've never really watched YouTube, the state board meetings on YouTube, but it looks like we have our comments are disabled. So people can't make comments one way or the other on what's going on. So just
Carol,
to point that out.
Carol, I'm on the USBE Law and Licensing Committee YouTube channel right now, and I made a comment, and another individual has made a comment in the chat box right now. So, yes, you can make comments.
Where? I don't see it.
Maybe they don't show up right-hand side.
It's on. It's on
right now. Okay. That just showed up. I don't know what I hit. Okay. Well, great. But the rest of it, it shows that comments, when I was going through all the past ones, it's showing comments are disabled. So I'm wondering if this goes away.
Maybe the old one.
Yeah.
The old one.
Okay. Any other comments, Lisa?
I would just disagree with A.G. Thomas. I think, but if this is a fairness factor, I apologize. I didn't know about Laura's incident. I don't think it was intentional. I think it was just to record the meeting itself, the discussion. So I don't think it was purposefully intended against someone with that intent. I think maybe it was just the angle of the location or the sitting or whatever. And so maybe just have board members talk to each other. I would even say, if it's a social media, have the camera face up to the ceiling and listen to the conversation, if that works out. But again, this is just another avenue. We've talked about limiting or the limitations of communication to our constituents and to the public, and this is just another way to reach our constituents that have been following many of us on social media. And it would be a great avenue. So maybe if we just talk to each other more, and instead of limiting what we can do, come to a conclusion of what we can do.
Okay, Board Member Belknap.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm sure because it was my board members that were across the table from me who were live streaming. So I'm wondering if there's some work that could be done here, and that because it says board members may not record or live stream any committee or other equipment without advance authorization. I'm just wondering if it's very clear what's going on. That maybe it's put in the middle of the room and it comes this direction, or something where we don't inhibit the ability to do that, but who's ever being live streamed, they know it, that's happening. So maybe this could maybe take a little more work to work on. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Board Member.
I appreciate that, Laura. Thank you.
Brittany.
It's interesting, the discussions that we've had in regard to our bylaws over the last couple of months as we kind of come together as a very diverse group, and we try and control each other's actions and create a kind of, I don't know how to say it. We're talking set of norms, and we talk about kind of the decorum of the board and boardsmanship and all of those kinds of things. But it's interesting, kind of, as I've thought about this process of, how do we just play nice without having to make a policy of it, and it feels like, that there was no intention of problem when people started to live stream meetings. It was just a matter of habit and how people connect with other people. And so I agree. I think there's a way to kind of maybe change the conversation that's proposed so that we recognize that, because we have people come everyone was taking pictures of the young men and young women, or the young women yesterday that were doing their art, and would this particular thing bar a board member from doing a quick live stream saying, oh, look at what awesome thing is happening? But maybe there needs to be some way of informing the public and the board members that, hey, I'm going to live stream for a moment because this is something that I really want to capture or something, but that people know, so that when that camera is there, you can duck. We could put shields if we need to, or whatever. I don't know, but it just seems like this interesting conversation as we try to back and forth, try and create a civil conversation and in a positive way that recognizes the value of each board member and what they're trying to contribute in given situations.
Thank you, Board Member Thomas. AAG Thomas.
Welcome aboard.
Well, no, and I love the way you're saying this. This is really, kind of trying to figure out how to work together, and so you can do that. Understand that in a board meeting, somebody could stand up in the back and hold up their camera and broadcast the whole thing. That's clearly permitted within the board member. This is just within the board members themselves to say, as you interact with each other, you can't restrict the public and what they're going to do, but you can with each other. You can say, look, I don't want you to sit and hold your camera with me the whole time. That's just not very fair. You're now trying to you disparage or put me in a bad light or something like this. This is just, we ought to have some kind of civility that's appropriate here, and that's really what this is more about. Is more about the issue of how do you want to do and how do you want to make sure that you're being treated fairly by each other in the comments you make or how you're held out, and so that you're doing it that way. And that's what this is all about.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Oh, come on. I'm going to start picking on people.
No, hey,
Just kidding. Yes.
For clarity, I didn't ever feel like I was being bullied by any board members, and I actually think that they were just trying to connect with their people. But I like the idea. It's not about fairness for me. It's about knowing what is happening. For example, I have zero poker face. If something bothers me, it comes right out on my face. And if I know I'm on camera, I'll just probably have to sit like this the whole time. I mean, it would change me personally.
Any other comments? Yes.
A couple of times, and I know that you're probably here to tell us that there's another part to this, and don't forget it. Okay, I was like, but a couple of times we've brought up the fact that there is in existence a board code of conduct that we all kind of disregard and don't know it's there. And I'm wondering if that would be a place where we could revisit some of this conversation, where we maybe put that on an agenda to update our board code of conduct so that it's not so strict that you cannot live stream in a meeting, but here's how we can use social media in our meetings and how it can benefit us as a board and the public, et cetera, so that we're not, that the public is not scared to come because they're worried, because the cameras don't usually point to the public and they're not worried about being live streamed or whatever. And so it's how do we so my thought is maybe not having this portion change in our bylaws now, but really look at this in the conversation of that code of conduct conversation.
That's a good idea.
I would agree with that. Brittany, the only thing is, as I'm watching on YouTube, I can see people go in and out of the back door. I can see, people coming and going, and I can see the public faces that are there. So the public will be recorded in these public meetings, and it will stay there forever. And the public needs to know that if they come to these meetings, they will be recorded. If they speak to the board, they will be recorded. It is public record. Can we also let them know that board members have the right to stream to their local social media? Sure. Is there a way to place those cameras? Yes, we can talk about that. Should we put it in the board of conduct? Sure, absolutely. Let's treat each other with respect and turn our cameras in a way that it won't highlight one specific board member the whole time. I mean, I know I was being photographed and recorded in yesterday's meeting by a member of the public. So does that make me uncomfortable? Absolutely, but it's public record, and we're in a public meeting. So, let's just be respectful and kind, I think, and show our true intent of reaching out to our constituents.
Okay. Ben Rasmussen, you're back.
Yes, I'm back. I was just going to point out, so this motion is this proposed amendment to the bylaws actually contains kind of two separate proposed amendments. So I just wanted to point out that on Article 9, Paragraph G, the proposal would be to kind of institute some language which I think basically is formalizing what is already the committee's practice, that it can by motion give staff direction to come back with additional information or draft rule, that kind of thing. Lorraine Austin asked that we consider that amendment just to formalize that is within the powers of one of the standing committees.
Okay. Yes.
So in here in the bylaws, it says by motion, a committee may, right? And it says to gather information to bring back for committee work. And I'm just curious how that fits in with current practice in Finance Committee, where individual board members can request data requests. So that's on their agenda to request data, and it doesn't have to really apply to committee work. It doesn't have to apply to anything. It's usually just an I'm curious about. And so if we're putting this in bylaws to formalize the committee, I'm just curious about that process and if we want to add that to the bylaws or if that's a different process of gathering information.
Can I say something? Go ahead. And I wish Lorraine were here to speak for herself, because I remember part of her recommendation for this language was related to subcommittee work and kind of distinguishing what a committee could do versus creating a subcommittee and so I apologize. Do you remember exactly why she
just came to me and asked me to add the language. She didn't give me a lot of background on it.
Yeah. But I think that could be different than the board request for information, because we kind of have another, not in board bylaws, but another process for individual requests for information. But this would be a committee actually making a motion to say, Ben, based on this discussion, we'd like you to bring us a draft rule next month or by August with this, which is very different than a request for information that's individual. So maybe it's in prioritization of staff work. I mean, this, in my mind, would be a higher priority, and it would be to come back to the committee versus a request.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Okay, yes.
I move that we amend Article
9.
Is it 9? Sorry,
Meetings.
the lines blur when I can't see. Article 9, P, subsection P, to add line 1, but not line 2, and strike line 2.
So that's in Article 8.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
So there's amendments to Articles 8 and 9. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Any discussion to that? So Lisa, did you hear that? It would be to put line 1 in, but not line 2.
Yes, I see that. Yep.
Any discussion to that motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
So you're going to go on to the next.
Yeah.
This one's 9 now.
Now,
Thank you.
yes.
That was me misleading her. I'm sorry, Brittany.
I was like, is there an extra line in there?
Vice Chair Warner. Vice Chair Warner. So all meetings, what is, I know we just voted and it just occurred to me afterwards. All meetings, what does that include? Because there are some meetings that we have that are not streamed, live streamed or recorded. Workshops, things like that, small, where the full board is not present. Can we amend that to include that when the full quorum of a board is meeting, that all meetings will be recorded? Or are we talking about other subcommittees that will be live streamed and recorded?
So, Board Member Cummins, this is Angie. So we do have
Yes.
meetings where there is a quorum of the board. For example, the legislative meetings when we are either in.
Right.
The facility does not allow us to live stream those. We don't have access to any kind of video recording there. Something like a study session that we've had, for example, in the USDB building, in those conference rooms. Again, that's something where there's not video technology available to live stream, and so that's why they are recorded, but they aren't necessarily live streamed. So I think that's what it's trying to state, is that they will all be recorded and live streamed when technology allows or is available.
Okay. Well, does that prohibit, if a board member wanted to live stream, say a legislative meeting at the Capitol, is that prohibited then?
Well, no, that's the different.
Is that a different thing?
Different, yeah. No, this is an
Okay.
official meeting recording. Yes.
Okay.
Maybe a suggestion would be to see the board shall record and live stream all open and public meetings. Because again, at that point, there is a differentiation. The open and public meetings are ones that are quorum based. And if they're not quorum, then there's not an obligation to do it regardless of the facilities. But then the other part of it, the facility technology is another natural limiter.
Point, because like our executive sessions, for example, you have a quorum and actually the technology exists, but in that case, it's not an open meeting. It's yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Right.
Motion to reconsider.
Okay.
Second.
Waiting for Brittany to come up with a new motion.
So I move that under Article 8 in the bylaws, Section P 1, that it read, the board shall record and live stream all open and public meetings where facility technology will allow, and then strike out Section 2, number 2.
Any discussion to that motion? All in favor?
Second. Aye.
Okay. Yes.
I move that we approve Article 9, the changes to Article 9 in the board bylaws as follows, with line 1 reading, the board shall record and live stream all open and public meetings on the internet where facility technology will allow it, striking number 2.
Okay. Any discussion? Do you want to just finish with
Just
G?
leave that would be part of the recommendation.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That goes forward. Now we're on to. Thank you. Oh wait, we're not done. Sorry.
Yeah. I would like to move that we recommend to board leadership that the board's code of conduct be added to an agenda.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Aye. Question, Vice Chair Warner.
Yes.
Are we going to, what about letter G under Article 9?
Yeah, that was included
Oh, that was included in Article 9, the motion?
in the motion. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to move on really quick to Jeannie, and then we'll be back to Whitney and Leah. Okay, and Brittany. Oh, do we need to take a break? Okay. No, we don't.
That's a point of order.
Okay. No, I think we'll be. Can we take a 5-minute break? Apparently.
Finances.
2-minute break. The timer's running. I'm putting my timer on. No, I'm just kidding.
Linda's first.
If
last fall, we had all of those focus groups on when we were doing licensing. And one of the things that they talked about was teacher leader. And if you'll remember, when we were in the task force, we decided to kind of put it off until after the legislative session and after we had kind of gotten everything rolling on the other licensing, and then talk about teacher leader. Well, the teachers didn't forget, and they started contacting me in March and saying, well, it's March, it's spring. Are we going to talk about teacher leader now? And so I went to Diana and said, this is really important. Not every teacher thinks it's great. Not every teacher thinks they want it, but there are a lot of teachers who really would like to have a teacher leader designation. So I went to Diana, and she and Jeannie have been working on it. And so they're here to present. Jeannie's going to tell us all about what their recommendations are.
There I am. Jeannie Rowland, Teaching and Learning. So currently we have quite a few things, well, it feels like quite a few, but we have a number of things that are going on with Teacher Leader. Part of our ESSA plan with the Title IIA funds was to work with teacher leaders and to develop that a bit more. So we have a subcommittee working on that right now, and they've put together a grant that they're just about ready to release with using between $100,000 and $120,000 to go out to the LEAs, looking specifically for innovative ideas for use of teacher leaders, since we have teachers already have so many things on their plate that this can feel like one more, and in fact it is one more. And so they're looking at that, looking for hybrid models of how they can have a teacher still have a classroom, because our teacher leaders are usually our best teachers. And so they're looking for that. They just want to hear what's going on out there and possibly either making a more robust system that they have for teacher leaders or something new. We also have a Teachers Leading Academy coming up in June that is for teachers to attend. It's put on by NSTOY, which is the National Network of Teachers of the Year. They're coming in for 3 days, which is really great. And the first day, everybody's together to get big pieces of adult learning and things. The second day, there are some other choices where they can choose one or the other. And then the last day, they get a whole day to plan and create their next steps and their action plans. So that's super exciting that's going on. Another piece is we're working with the Utah Hope Street Fellows. They have 20 fellows and 6 mentors. These fellows are teachers that have applied to be part of it, had to have recommendations, and they've been working together this school year to build our first Utah version. I guess it's not really a version, but our own chapter, I guess you could say. And they have been doing a lot of research this year. They've talked with Diana and I for a while, and then they set out with this survey that they did and study groups. And they did study groups face-to-face with 600 educators. That's a pretty big number. They also put it online for people that weren't able to attend in person, and they reached an additional 195 educators. So they had people from all over. They had even included some USBE people while they were having them here. They had mostly teachers, did include some administrators and current teacher leaders. And so this report is something that came of that. They had the data from the focus groups and the surveys looked at by an outside group, the Magnolia Company, I believe, and they came up with 2 findings and some recommendations. And so this may help as we look at how we move forward with this. I put a paper copy in front of you, and it is also on board docs. So for those of you that are old-fashioned like me, you have paper, and otherwise it's online. So if you go to page II, so double I, is where you get the big overview of what they found and what they recommend. They looked both at how teachers felt valued and what an effective teacher looks like. And then they looked at teacher leadership and what our teachers around the state are feeling about those things. So the first finding was that teachers feel better, obviously, when they're recognized for what it is that they do, that they are trusted to do their job, and compensation, of course, is a part of it. They like to see their students succeed, have positive relationships with them, etc. And their recommendation on that would be that we could consider, Utah State Board of Education could consider collecting some more types of data to find out and understand more about the perception of value and climate that our teachers are in. The second finding was talking about characteristics that the teachers feel that are a highly effective teacher has, and they highlighted big ones as far as or the biggest one they said is to align our standards with what are they? Sorry. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. With the National Board standards, which are a different set. They also mentioned InTask. However, we are already fully aligned with the InTask standards. The last one, which is what Linda is most interested in and wants to talk about, is the issue of teacher leadership and how much the teachers are already using their own time, their own resources, and it's requiring additional work for them to be in this position. Everybody calls it different. All the LEAs have a different definition of what teacher leader is, and it's the roles are defined in both code and rule, but there isn't an actual description of what the job is. So basically the recommendations were coming up with the career pathway. They also were talking about, specifically they wanted non-instructional time as part of their contract. So part of their day, that's where we're talking about the hybrid model where we keep these fantastic teachers still affecting our students and then being able to share with their peers for another half of the day. There are some models out there around the country that people are doing. They also were talking about additional compensation, obviously, because these teacher leader roles the roles as defined by both you and the legislature has been that they are mentoring student teachers as well as their cooperating teacher, which is quite a bit of time and extra work for them. And then one of the things that they found aligned with a study that we did here when this first came out was that teachers wanted obviously some type of career pathway right now. And I received a tap on the shoulder from Sid when I was a teacher, and the idea was you go into administration. If you're a good teacher and you want to advance, you go to be a principal. So they're looking at something different possibly, and this is what Linda's addressing. And then the other thing that was interesting, and it actually came out in this as well, was that teachers want a voice, and they don't want a voice after things have been created, whether it's legislation or board rule or LEA level decisions, and then they have a voice about how it's implemented. They would like a voice on how when those decisions are made so that their voices are considered. And the nice thing about the board as of late, you all have been very good about bringing in stakeholders, including teachers, to give them feedback. So those are the three big pieces that are happening right now. The rule says that we do not need to have an endorsement, but it doesn't say that we can't. And there are a few different avenues we could take to recognize that. But Linda, I'll let you.
I was just going to mention that in the school leadership task force that we're working on, it has been mentioned that we have so many people. The example they gave was that Box Elder had 2 openings for administrators this year and had 80 applicants. And most states have other pathways to leadership. All we have is administration. And so they would like to see some other pathways opened up so that people could lead and feel like they could maybe we could have an endorsement for teacher leader, and that would help, and some people would be more able to do that, because they said they get lots of applicants who really aren't administrative material. They would be great in their classrooms, great as teacher leaders, but they're really not, and they're just applying so that they can get a leg up on their salary. So
Brittany?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll go after you.
I have lots of questions because this is an exciting topic. The concept of shared leadership in a school, I think, has a lot of opportunity, and so I'm curious as you've gone forward, because as I read this draft idea in rule, and that's what we're seeing, right? Is this proposed an idea of what it could look like in rule? It feels like the roles of the teacher leader feel more like a teacher mentor than an actual teacher leader that would take on administrative type responsibilities. It feels like we're still looking at this concept as we have a principal, we have a vice principal, and then we have teacher leaders that are going to take care of the mentoring part of it. And I'm curious if you've had conversations that expand that more, that look at teacher leadership, because I believe you made the comment that they would like to have decision-making process in kind of the administration part, not just in the implementation. And yet a lot of these roles are still just implementation of a policy or a program or something, just at a training level or given more responsibility. And so I'm curious if you've had conversations that would actually open this up more for LEAs who wants to go that route and have a designee, in that we're not trying to define this role in such a way that wouldn't allow an LEA to really look at it differently, I guess is the base question I have. Sorry. So.
Okay, say that one more time.
Okay. So the concept, I really like the concept of this idea, and I think there's a lot of people who do and are excited about it. So my question is does this proposed idea in rule, would it be too constricting to allow an LEA to really look at how they offer administration in a school? Because this role is very much just, it feels to me when I read it very teacher mentorish instead of the ability to take on administrative responsibilities.
That's
so
great.
Has that conversation been had?
It's a really good question, and yes, the conversation has been had. We've talked quite a bit about the fear that it's going to be viewed as a mentor, and that a teacher leader is more than just a mentor. And so part of the things that were pulled out, there's another piece in rule that talks about that they do school level professional learning for the other teachers. I believe in rule when the roles were expanded a little bit, there was put in that they would participate in more committees, and they would have a say in any school improvement opportunities that were happening that way.
See, Dr. Dixon told me she has a list, a couple of pages long, of ways that you can use teacher leaders beyond mentoring. So, and that's the teachers I've talked to, is they don't want it to be looked at as just mentoring. They want more leadership roles.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
And so I guess my question then is, why write a rule that tries to define the roles of a teacher leader rather than allowing an LEA or even a school, if the LEA gives them that flexibility to define? And so just basically put the roles that they could be administrative, they could be mentoring, etc., that the LEA could define this. And then when we look at the competencies or the criteria, minimum criteria of a teacher leader, and I apologize, I don't mean to tear this all apart. I just worry that when we create a rule that we're actually going to not create what we're really trying to create. Because when we look at the minimum criteria for the teacher leader, obviously number one would have to be changed if we're going to look at our licensing, but obviously we've got a couple of years where that's going to be in there. But But yesterday in our ESSA conversation, we heard that the idea of using teacher evaluations as highly effective or effective, that's pretty much everyone, right? And so is that really a good criteria to use as a criteria for a teacher leader? And then when it talks about demonstrating competence and working with adult learners and peers, I think it was more specific in here where it wasn't just competence in working with adult learners, but it talked about flexibility, adaptability, growth mindset, having good pedagogical skills, as well as a positive attitude in the response to student needs. Because even though they're going to be doing administrative qualities and they're still a teacher, they have to be able to communicate. I know what I do, I can communicate what I do, right? I'm good at what I do and I can communicate it and I can help mentor someone else. And those are two different skills. And so anyways, and so I love this idea and I'm really excited about it, but how do we make it so that we can create this conversation in a way that doesn't downplay it? My biggest fear with a lot of things is that we try and create something to create value for a person and we end up almost patronizing them, saying, oh, look at you, you've got this teacher leader role, but what does that really mean? You're just a, and I want this to really be a value so that teachers feel that they are a leader in their school, not just a bumped up teacher or whatever, that they have the opportunity to be a leader and have those administrative responsibilities if that's the way the LEA wants to implement it.
Brittany, can I interrupt just a minute? And because Diana, I think, has probably some of those answers. She and I have not talked about writing a rule. We've talked about more about it, an endorsement, but I'll let her.
This one's better. It's not new. It already exists.
Right, it's up there. Right, so just to clarify, we did talk about a teacher leader, even in the license area when we were talking about licensing, and decided that that wasn't appropriate because we'd be creating something that's really an employment kind of a thing. As we've talked to the LEAs, they really value their teacher leaders, but they don't want to be forced to saying that they have to be at a certain place on the salary schedule, or they don't want to have to recognize them if they're not actually doing the work of a teacher leader. And so what we're interested in pursuing, and really we just want to know whether you're interested in this or not too, is an endorsement, which doesn't actually require any board action. We're just wanting to do the will of the board in terms of this. And through that endorsement and the development of that endorsement, we can address the kinds of things that you're talking about through whatever that coursework would be. So the coursework part of it would be about mentoring, of course, because that's probably the biggest role that teacher leaders do, but it could also have some of those more administrative functions too, and might even have some coursework that could pass over to the administrative licensed area if a teacher leader enjoyed that kind of leadership and then wanted to go a little step further. So really what we're looking at from you is just kind of a general direction is, do you want us to pursue this, knowing that there's no job that requires a teacher leader, and that we would not put that on the LEAs either. It would be more like the reading endorsement, which is a badge of you have some competence that other people don't have, so that when an LEA might want to recognize a teacher leader on the salary schedule or assign them to certain kinds of positions, then when they were selecting who was going to do that, the teacher leader endorsement people might have an advantage in that. Yes.
So currently there are some positions that require endorsements. Is that correct?
Yes, at the secondary level, like to be a math teacher, you have to have a math endorsement. Yeah.
And so is that in board rule that makes those requirements, that this requirement is?
They're not listed like which ones require them, but the idea of an endorsement is in board rule, but it doesn't say like which endorsements match with which salaried positions.
Sorry, I'm
little area of concentration.
Well, right. So the license areas of concentration, So, for example, the administrative license area of concentration, that is in board rule, and it says if you're going to be a principal, you have to have that. If you're going to teach secondary school, then you have to have the license area of concentration and an endorsement. But it doesn't say which endorsements or what the content of the endorsements are. Reading endorsements are not anywhere in board rule. Are there any, Travis or Jeannie, that would be an endorsement where it is specifically tied to a job?
ESL?
No, there's no requirement that you have an ESL endorsement. Some of the LEAs will make those requirements. So they can take the endorsements and say, in our district or charter school, in order to fulfill this job, you have to have the endorsement. But we don't do that at this level.
Okay. Can I just, 'cause that was my concern, is like if we create the endorsement, will it tie anyone's hands on doing whatever hiring they would like to do? Sorry.
You're checking off my list here.
But, that we leave this, because this is a great opportunity, but it can't come from here. We can't create a system that accepts and fosters a good leader in a school, right? That has to come through that system. The principal in the school has to be a good leader in order to facilitate this ability for teachers to be good leaders as well. And so I would like to, whatever we do moving forward, and maybe we need to look at this rule, but whatever it goes forward, and if the endorsement is open enough that basically it allows the teacher to seek for training and look for things, and it doesn't tie the LEA into a specific role or hiring process or whatever, then I'm comfortable with it. But I want to make sure that as we move forward that this is really done well, so that it doesn't become a patronizing situation where I've got my button and here's your little assignment that I'm going to give you, yay, but it's truly a leadership role, because otherwise it's going to do the opposite of what we have when we're trying to create a professionalism and that feeling of accomplishment in people, that if it feels like a token opportunity, then it has the ability to actually decrease the morale and not create those true feelings of leadership and accomplishment.
I think there are some schools who'd like to do it. When we went to the principal focus group, there were principals there who said, I don't know how I would ever use a teacher leader. And there were other principals who were saying, I've got my list. I could use them here, 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 here. And so I think that as others kind of show the way, and say, this is the way we're going to use them, then other LEAs may get an idea. But this is all optional, but I'm with you. I think it should be something that, strengthens what we do. I don't want it to be something that we put in place and it never gets used. I think it's something that we should encourage. And I think there's ways that we could possibly do that. We've talked about perhaps asking an LEA to pilot it, somebody who's really enthusiastic about it, and doing those kinds of things too. So those are, I think we could encourage it as a board perhaps as well.
Vice Chair Warner.
Well, hang on, Lisa. We got Brittany with one last question.
I promise, last one.
It won't be.
Okay.
It will be. So if we do go forward with an endorsement and developing that, will there need to be changes to that board rule in order to really look at the endorsement?
No.
Okay. We wouldn't need to,
It just
even
says
though
that
it
it's not
defines the
required.
roles.
Yeah.
It's all May.
May. Okay.
Okay.
Would it be beneficial to look at both of them at the same time?
Maybe, and I think that would be something, this work would be something that Jeannie would lead, and that would be something that, as it developed, as she talked to principals about what they wanted and looked at different kinds of standards that are available, the rule would obviously be a part of that conversation, so maybe.
Okay.
And the code itself says, I'm sorry, Chair, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the code itself says that a school district or charter may assign a teacher to a teacher leader position without a teacher leader endorsement. So it says that right in the code.
Okay. And Travis, did you want to make a comment? Okay. Angie?
No,
Okay.
But I do.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh.
So Lisa,
Yes.
you wanted to say something?
Yes, I did. In my mind, I'm going over the teachers that still feel like they don't have a voice, that their voice isn't being heard. And so I'm wondering if this teacher leadership will provide that liaison so that teachers who feel that they cannot speak out against a policy that has affected them in the negative, who that has affected their classroom. Where do they go? Because right now, having talked to many of my own teachers and teachers across the state, there are many out there that don't feel like they have anybody that they can go and talk to or speak on their behalf. And so I want to make sure that this isn't just another group that will suppress teachers' voices in concerns and situations that they have.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to take a minute and thank everybody for working on this, because we had this discussion in law and licensing with Dave Thomas when he was the chair.
LEA should.
Yes, like years ago, a long time ago. And I just think this is an amazing opportunity for educators, and I agree with Brittany. I would like it to have a lot of flexibility. There may be smaller districts or specific schools that wouldn't be able to use this, but others may be able to use it. And so I think it's an excellent opportunity if schools want to use this, and if teachers want to do the work to do this, because I agree. I think there are a lot of teachers out there that would like to have some sort of additional responsibility. I think we did pass a rule. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy. We talked about this. Didn't we pass a rule that if you are a teacher leader, the schools can give you flexible time?
It's this
Okay,
one.
yeah. Okay.
It's this one.
We had this discussion a while ago. So I think this will be great. Any public comments on this? Okay. Oh, Laura wanted to say something, then Terry, then Tracy.
I'll just move so Terry can come up to me.
Stay here for just a minute, Linda, because you might have an answer and to be involved. I think it's interesting that you're talking about a career pathway for teachers here, but nowhere have we talked about any sort of compensation, whether it's financial or time, for these teachers. And I think that to be a leader, there's got to be some give here in some place. The other thing is, I do know that there are several districts around the state that use what they call learning coaches, and they are not just mentors. They are literally part of the administrative team inside the schools. How will this affect already what they're doing? Will we hinder them from continuing with their teacher leader programs that they already have? And I'm also with Brittany. I'm not sure. I still question the endorsement. So really, I have so many things. I should just stop. But the endorsement, I still feel like it could handcuff teachers from the opportunity who maybe you have a great teacher leader in your school, but they are not taking the time to get their endorsement for whatever reason, but they are looked at as the leader in the school, as the director in the school. They don't have the endorsement. So are we handcuffing them from progressing because they didn't get the endorsement? So those are my thoughts.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Does anybody want to take a stab at that
I didn't know if
one?
anyone wanted to stab at those, or we can talk later.
Well, there is in rule in the very last section specifically says an LEA should, and that's what I was addressing with the chair, is that this was a big conversation with Dave Thomas. He wanted to say shall.
Oh, yeah, we argued about that.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't argue, but we talked about it.
So we ended up with should, but it says provide a bonus, pay increase, or other monetary incentive to compensate the leader or the teacher leader, or reduce a teacher leader's classroom workload to provide teacher leader time.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Exactly.
That was an and reduce the teachers.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyway, Linda.
I don't think it would affect anybody who doesn't want to use it. I think it would allow people to use it if they wanted to use it. And I think we can work through these things. I would hate for us just to say, oh, it's going to be too hard. And I've been talking to the Hope Street gals, and guys, and they're saying, that they really want to work on this. And I said, it may be difficult, there might be a lot of things that we're going to have to work on to work through. But it's, it's worth it. I think it will be worth it. It may be difficult to get through it, but I think we can get all the stakeholders together. We can work on it and we can do it. We can do hard things, right?
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I will have some questions coming up. So
To build on that, one of the, and I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, the whole idea of having a definition of a teacher leader isn't anywhere, and for a while that was kind of frustrating for those of us that were working on it. However, that's one more way that we would have to name the endorsement something if we went the endorsement route. So teacher leader endorsement, but the LEAs could use that as they wished or if they wished. We would just have to name it something, but they have with the learning coaches and things would be supported.
Thank you. Okay, Terry, the hot seat's right there, ready for you.
Thank you. Terry Shoemaker with Utah School Board Association, Utah School Superintendents Association. I love this subject. As a superintendent, I spent 15 years working on it. And I would say to you that this is not something you can do top down to succeed. I think Brittany was exactly right, that this is something that succeeds when it's done at the local level, really at the school level best, okay? Because frankly, the teachers will follow those who they believe are actually our leaders. And that is something that a wise principal develops in his or her school. They look for that. They create the opportunities, paid or not paid, they create them. I'm telling you, I spent 15 years working on it, trying to create paid opportunities, because that's how you build it as a career opportunity. If we're going to go down this road, let's be thinking about exactly what you were saying, Brittany. Let's not do it because it's a nicety. Let's do it because we want it to become a career leadership opportunity. And it can be done. You know, whether it's instructional coaching for technology, that was one of the emphasis we had there, or whether it's instructional coaching for reading, or other types of curriculum areas, or whether it's this is the number two, and there's the principal, then here's number two. Principal's gone quite a bit because let's say it's a high school principal, and it's a smaller school. This person assumes leadership responsibilities there as if they were the principal. Okay. They have to be real for them to be meaningful. That was your point. I couldn't agree more. And yet, I do know that if you try to anoint this from on high, it will only work as well as districts somehow figure out to make them work in their own way. Because there is no additional funding for this. That was your point.
Right.
Okay? So it's going to happen as school districts create opportunities to make it happen. But is it an important thing for school districts to look into? Absolutely. And many has been suggested too. There are many school districts right now who have instructional teaching leaders in schools doing wide variety of roles who are learning leadership roles. They may lead to administrative assignments. They may lead to district assignments as an instructional leaders at the district level. They may lead to other school assignments. But the truth of the matter is that this is something whose time cannot be neglected. I'm really grateful that Senator Milner a few years ago decided this was important. And the rule we have in place, I do think it is a direction worth pursuing, but not from the top down.
Thank you. Okay, Tracy?
There's a lot of microphones.
You could use both of them.
Tracy Watson, UEA. I kind of brought you some data, but I absolutely agree on the Hope Street findings. The Hope Street findings, I think, are right on. You know, what I find about teachers, and like Terry said, like Brittany said, I mean, this kind of has to come from the teachers up rather than top down, right? Because teachers, they don't, you know, we want to make a leadership track or administration or something like that. They don't really have those goals. They're focused on students. It's a calling. Like, it's a weird group of people, let me just tell you. They're my clients and I love them. But it's a calling. It's not like you don't become a teacher. What's that? Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's because they have this heart and they have this special dedication to their students. And we hear it at every board meeting. Like yesterday when when we were recognizing the art and we had the art kids, behind every art kid is a teacher that inspired them. And it's not about the money, it's not about the title, it's not about the endorsement, it's not about the, but it is an incredible, this teacher leadership is an incredible retention tool. It's an opportunity because we have to find a way to make it easier for teachers. We have to find a way to relieve some of their stress. Some of the other data coming out is why teachers leave the profession: burnout, lack of respect. So we have that role model of civic and societal responsibility, but that role model rule is just an expectation. We don't treat teachers as role models, right? Like there's a great Facebook video and it says if we treated teachers like they were sports heroes, right? And I mean, there's glitter after every class, water bottles, patting on the back. We don't do that, and they don't expect that. But when they get it, it's remarkable, because that's the other thing that they respond to, and that was in the Hope findings. When you value a teacher, when a teacher feels valued, they're unstoppable what they can do. And so this teacher leader is a chance to really make teaching easier, right? And one of the things you have to be careful when you start sort of aligning it with a parallel path to administration or an alternative path to administration is leader, mentor, administrator, because mentor and evaluator can't go together. If you fear that who's mentoring you is also then reporting you or somehow keeping data on you, that doesn't work together. And so I wanted to share with you, when I saw that this was a topic, I reached out to our UNISERV directors and said, what are you doing in your locals for teacher leaders? What's happening in your districts? And I wanted to share that data with you. But I also want to say, if UEA can be part of this conversation, if we can collaborate here, I mean, this is an area that we really believe in because it's a retention area. Mm-hmm. But so some of the data I got, because what you're going to see is just what Terry said, is districts are already doing this because smart principals know that it's necessary and it's a retention. So now we're going to try to like sort of put a cap on it or somehow put an umbrella and try to capture what's already happening. And that's going to be a little bit tricky because you'll see that this data is all over the board. So for example, in Canyons, they have achievement coaches, whether that fits teacher leader or not. The achievement coaches do not have a class of students. Right. So their focus is on coaching. In Jordan, they have mentoring, and the mentors are compensated by their daily rate of pay for each mentee. So I'm told that if you have 3 mentees to work with, you receive 3 days of pay, right? But the time spent on this is time when there aren't classes, when students are not in class. But some principals will arrange for substitutes for mentors to observe the mentee or vice versa. So, and in Iron County, though, there are leadership programs that require extra meetings, extra responsibilities, no compensation, right? Do teachers still do it? Yep, you bet they do. Because it's like when we were talking yesterday about the licensing rule, like teachers have to help out their colleagues. Not everyone, right? But they're going to help them whether they're paid for it or not. And that's something we have to recognize and be sure that we have a reward system, whether that's a monetary reward system or other kind of reward system, like the mays and the shoulds. Those are kind of like empty directives, mays and shoulds. We already know that. In Garfield, they don't have any programs. Park City has instructional coaches. They also seem to have either they don't have their own class or they have a reduced class. Wasatch has mentors and instructional coaches that are paid for their time. Duchesne has mentors, but they're not compensated. South Summit has mentors for provisional educators, but it depends upon the principal if they receive a stipend. Uinta has something completely different because their relationship is a little bit closer to that of administrators, and so they're paid a stipend, but then the teachers are a little bit less reluctant to work with them because they don't know if they're being evaluated or mentored. In Northern, and I say Northern because the UNISERV director wouldn't identify the district, they have some of these positions, but they don't believe that they should be compensated for it because they believe it falls under exempt duties, FLSA exempt status. So teachers should just do it, right? That's probably not going so well. And then in Washington County, what's interesting is they are developing their own teacher leader endorsement because they're recognizing the endorsement. The problem is that endorsement may or may not be recognized by other districts. So if you have this endorsement, you work hard for this endorsement, but you change districts and you realize that that endorsement didn't go with you. So I just brought you some data to tell you kind of what is happening and that this is a big job, but one that we really should put in energy and resources to making it work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I pushed that off, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Just to follow up, we do have 2 universities that have developed a teacher leader master's type program that they come out with a degree with that. So we have universities that we can work with for the whole endorsement process and those types of things. A lot of support from them.
Okay. Yes, Brittany.
So that's a master's in teacher leadership, which is different than an administrative master's. Okay, interesting.
Okay. Any other questions? This is an informational issue, so we don't get to make a motion, but I think, did you get enough? Do we have any direction for her or for them?
Do you want an endorsement? Do you want us to look at alternatives? Where would you like us to go?
Brittany, any ideas?
My thoughts would be that as you explore the endorsement idea, that it be as broad as you can make it so that it recognizes the scope of what an LEA may interpret as a leader. So it doesn't become a mentoring endorsement or what, so it's not pigeonholed into something. And I would say, speaking to, a lot of LEAs are doing different things. And so I think even being careful in what we name it so that we don't create boundaries that we're not trying to create just by its name or its title. And then so speaking to LEAs about what they're doing and what are those things that would be beneficial. But I do say that even going forward, asking LEAs that if this endorsement existed, would it limit your choice? Like, would you begin to require then that this endorsement be met in order to fill whatever shared leadership you're trying to create in a school? Because I also don't want that to be, because a principal should have the ability, or an LEA, whatever the flexibility is set up kind of in that umbrella of administration, that there's enough flexibility that they can recognize in another human person skills that they would like to hire or assign to something, not because they've got a star on their forehead that may or may not reflect what exactly exhibited by that other person, right? And so that's my biggest concern in going down the endorsement route. And so I would say, as you explore this, really addressing and being cautious of that possibility.
Okay, thank you. Does that give you some idea?
Did you help him?
Laura, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. And finally, we get to go to Whitney and Leah, who've been waiting patiently. Although Whitney's, oh, here she is. It was. Thank you so much.
Wouldn't that be great? Getting
Okay.
Just to remind everyone, this item was brought before this committee in March. At the time, there was no USBE sponsor, and since then, it's been adopted by Leah Voorhees here. And in the last April board meeting, it was recommended that this be brought back to this committee for your consideration. So here we are.
Okay. Any questions? Or you want to, do you? Okay. Well, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we move forward with the data sharing agreement with Westat.
Okay. Any discussion to that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great. Sounds like that was easy enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lisa?
She may be off.
You may be off.
Yep. No, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're done with our meeting. Have a great.
All righty.
Okay. Can I entertain the last motion? Do we have to have a motion to adjourn? Okay.
You were right, Ezra.
Okay. I'm not.